back aliens to the Aliens Club. Today we are going to see about the topic called pivot table. Before getting into that video, let me explain what is that pivot table means. So pivot table is mainly used for accounting and dashboard purposes in Excel work. And the main focus of pivot table is minimizing the data from the large amount of data sets. Let's assume we are having around 10,000 or 20,000 records, and here we need that some of those columns and some of those rows. And how do you do that? We cannot go and check manually on every row and column the data is correct or not. So for that, Excel has a default functionality named as a default pivot table. So through pivot table we can take that relevant columns and rows based on our criteria, and we can define the relevant grouping, relevant filter mechanism, and the relevant values, and you can change that rows to columns. You can do anything with the pivot table functionality. And here we provide that best practice on how to use that pivot table in your works. So let's get into that video. Here you can see five columns: serial number, name, number of days, months, and amount. And I'm just having around 90 columns, 90 rows. So I just want to take a grouping of names and months, and I just want that that amount spent for Ravi, Raj, and these things. If I want the data, I need to check one by one. We or I need to put that filter here, and if I want that month I need to put the filter here, and if I want the amount I need to put the filter here, and if I want the number I need to put the filter here. So these things can be done without a single logic. We need to put one by one filter, and we need to search one by one names, and this is a many this will create much time to do that activity. So without so to avoid that time consuming work, you can do this functionality with the pivot table within a short amount of time. So let's create a pivot table for these operations. So for that you need to go to that data from that file menu, and if you check that you can see pivot table from that data menu options, and this shortcuts can be varied based on that excel different excels. And now I am using the Google sheet, and if you check that ms excel, you can see in different menu items, whereas in OpenOffice you can see in different menu items. And here I'm just proceeding with the Google sheet. I'm just selecting the pivot table from the data, and if we check that, it is asking create pivot table. Pivot table is like what data you want it, and what the data range I need to create the pivot table. Okay, here you can see the data range nothing but what data range that I need to look for. Okay, so here I need to select that data range whichever I'm having the data. So instead of you can define it manually, or you can select that data range here on the data box. I'm just selecting all the data ranges, and it is applied automatically, sheet 5 and B3 F91. Okay, you need to click OK, and if you check that, you can see that one more option called insert into. So here we have two options, new sheet and existing sheet, and it is always recommended to use that pivot table in a new sheet. So the reason is that mainly use of pivot table is minimizing the data from the large amount of data collection. So let's assume we are having the 20,000 records, and if you are saving that pivot table in the same same sheet, you'll get confused. And the main purpose of the BO table is to create the dashboard alone. Okay. And so if we are having the dashboard within the data collection, it will create the contradictory, and it will be very confused one. So it is always recommended to create a new sheet. But now we are just practicing only. So if you create that within existing sheet, you will understand it little bit more with comparing that original data and that pivot table. I'm just creating that existing sheet, and we need to provide that specific cell and to in which that pivot table will be created. So I'm just selecting that the range. I need to create the pivot table in the J5 column, J5 cell, and click OK. And if you click create, it will get created. Now if you check that, the pivot table is created. But if you see that the table got created, the table is nothing but a empty table, and it is having no data, nothing, no values, no rows, nothing. If you see that, it will be like that. But we need to create that table dynamically based on our requirement. So that is called pivot table. And for that, so if you click the table anywhere, you can see that on options here, pivot table editor. Here you can do any operation in that. So here you can see rows, columns, values, filters. Rows is nothing but what kind of data I need to populate that values here. Means if you are selecting any specific column, that column will be considered as a row values. Let's take an example by selecting a row as a name. If you click add, it will show the list of columns or serial number, name, number of days, month, and amount. But how does it come? Because I'm just clicking add, but how it is fetching that serial number, everything into here. The reason is in the starting we just selected the range, right? So from that range, it will fetch that all the headers. It will take the headers, the first value, whatever appearing the first value, it will take at the header. Okay. So here whatever you are saying, that is the first value from the range we provided in the first initial itself. So here if we check that, here we have 5 columns, and I just want to define the name as a row. So I'm just selecting the name as a row. Yeah. So if we check that, the pivot table has created you everything as a row. Means the duplication will be removed. The name, if you check that, here we have around 90 columns, 90 rows, but it is omitting all the duplicates, and we have around 11 counts only. Bits means it's just grouping that names into that rows. Okay. And okay, so I think you know some points of the rows. And we have one more element called columns. Columns is nothing but I have that names as a row, but if I want to display that month as a columns, means whatever you are selecting the column, so that will be displayed the column section here. It will be displayed here. So let's take an example with selecting the columns as month. If I select that, you can see that the month here it is available on every row. But here if you check that, the duplicates will be removed, and the respective the distinct columns and distinct months is applied in that column wise. Yeah. So pivot table generally is used to grouping that number of elements with our specific conditions. Here you can define anything. So instead of month, you can define even the name itself in that column. Let's take in that. I'm just selecting that columns as an sorry. So that you cannot do because already you selected the name as a what rows, so that you cannot do that operation. So next, now I just don't want to take that month as a column. Instead of that, I'm just taking that amount as a column. So if you check that, Here you can see whatever data available in that amount, that will be distinct, and the data will be populated in that columns with you can see that order also. If you select the descending, it will be the descending order. That's good, right? And we just closing that. I don't want that column also. Now I just want to add that value. What do you mean by that add? So value means it will do the summing, or many operations are there. So so that can be performed only for that numeric operations. So numeric operations, you have this many functions. It will have this many functions. Let's assume I'm having for every person there is certain amounts of fields. So with that table itself, I'm just going with that. Here I'm having that Raj, Ravi, Manoj, and number of days, and this table I just created only for as a worksheet. Means in company point of view, the name of the person Raj has worked 4 days in the month of January, and that the respective amount to be paid for Raj is 200. So this is the actual table structure of actual functionality of the table. And here I just want to know that, my target is to retrieve that person, to retrieve that amount in person wise. So that is my ultimate target. And so let's assume how that value is working. I'm just selecting that value as amount, and that is the that summarize. I'm putting you're having many function, but I'm putting the sum. Okay, and if you click OK, you can see what is the amount to be paid for Avin. That's good, right? So let's take an example with Avin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We have 8 findings for Avin. And if you check that sum of that amount for that Avin is sum is a 300, 3200. The sum is a 3200. Yeah. So we did filter to verify the data. We did filter, and we did that sum of all the amount available for them. So this many operation can be avoided with doing that pivot table itself. So it is directly done. So likewise, that the entire amount is retrieved for so other persons as well. And hope it clarifies you. And apart from this sum function, we are having many more functions, something like you can do data filter, and how to integrate the date function in pivot table, and you can do many group functionality in pivot table. Likewise, we are having many more function in it, so that we can see it in that next video available in the suggestion box. Click that and you can get to know more about it. And thank you for watching. Hope it helps you on how to create that pivot table in the perfect way. See you again.